he was convincing everyone in the home that this boy will become somebody.
It didn't take long for him to convince Molly.
I came back to my senses. I said, I must look after him like my own.
Molly tried to track down the boy's family. There were a number of stories circulating around the village about his parents, and eventually Molly gathered enough information to piece together John's story. It all began in this house, now abandoned.
The mother had died, so the stepmother used to mistreat him. And somebody also said that this stepmother might have used some African charms to bewitch him, and he had to run away from home.
Just 4 years old, John left his house and ran into the darkness of the jungle. Molly believed that it was here, nestled among the trees, alone and helpless, that John came face to face with the vervet monkeys. But as frightening as that experience must have been for John, running away from home was the beginning of a new life. 12 years later, John Sabunya is living happily with his new family. Now 17 years old, he still lives at the orphanage, but as the adopted son of Molly and Paul. In many ways, John's like any other teenage boy. He hangs out with his friends, and he's mad about sport. In the years since he left the jungle, he's made tremendous progress. But to this day, he has trouble learning. John functions at a kindergarten level, and he speaks and understands only a little Ugandan and English. But in other ways, John has excelled. His love of running led Molly and Paul to enter him in the Special Olympics, and this has now become a passion. One of the key people in John's life is Solomon M. Weber, who acts as his big brother and mentor. Over the years, Solomon has learned to interpret John's broken language. John has become used to the urban world of Kampala. But we've asked Solomon to bring John back to the place where he was first found, to see if he remembers anything about his time in the wild. John's a bit nervous, but there's one thing he remembers clearly.
Well, we're here with John, and he's been trying to explain to me that this used to be his home. This is the very tree he was found, but it was a bit short when he could climb it. So this is the very tree where he was found.
Solomon asks what else John remembers.
John remembers more of the young monkeys, the small monkeys. He says that most of his time during the time, they were spending that time on eats. They were ever eating whatever they had.
The reality of being lost in the jungle would surely have been frightening for a small boy. But that isn't what John seems to remember. Instead, he recalls playing with the monkeys.
John says that when he was with the small monkeys, they used to hide and each one had to go and look for another one. So they were playing. It was kind of their game. So that's the thing they used to do.
Eating and playing are what we might expect of the memories of a 4-year-old child. But are these memories real? And would monkeys that encountered a young child in the woods really take care of him? John isn't the only child allegedly raised by monkeys. In the early 1900s, a notorious story emerged from South Africa. The strange tale of Lucas, the baboon boy. Near the small town of Kunap, police apprehended a wild boy they claimed to have found living among a troop of baboons. The officers said he behaved like a wild animal. He ran on all fours, he bit them, and he shrieked like a baboon. The boy was institutionalized and eventually put into the care of a local farmer, who employed him as a farmhand and named him Lucas. But the same officers then declared they discovered the origins of this strange boy. They claimed that Lucas had been stolen by baboons when he was just an infant from a village nearby. The case caused a sensation in the international media, and scientists were skeptical but intrigued. Renowned anthropologist Dr. Raymond Dart even sent a colleague to Kunap to interview the then adult Lucas, in an attempt to see if there was anything behind the claims that he was the real-life Tarzan of South Africa. The idea of baboons raising a human infant sounds pretty far-fetched to 21st century experts, not least because we now know that baboons can be fearsome predators and their troops enforce a strict social order. But there are several modern-day incidents caught on tape that suggest other higher primates might at least protect a human child. In 1996, a 3-year-old boy fell into the gorilla pen at the Brookfield Zoo in Chicago. Keepers tried to drive the gorillas back from the unconscious child. The crowd watched in horror as they saw Binti, the dominant female of the group, pick him up. But instead of harming him, Binti protected the boy, holding him in her arms until human help arrived. The images are compelling, but holding an unconscious child isn't the same as caring for another species. Dr. Stephen Sumi from the National Institute of Child and Human Development in Maryland studies the biobehavioral development of another primate species, the rhesus monkey, and he thinks the idea of cross-species nurturing is a theoretical possibility.
We know that rhesus monkeys will form relationships with other animals, dogs, wild cats, horses, so it's possible, I would think, in theory, for these monkeys to form relationships with people over the long term as well.
Dr. Sumi has observed a distinct pattern of response from the monkeys when it comes to human contact.
The monkeys that we study here know all of the caretakers, they know the veterinarians, they know the individuals who collect data. They make decisions regarding the gender of the human they're interacting with, so they're more cautious around adult males than they are around adult females. And they make great differences in terms of the age of the humans that they're interacting with.
And most interesting is the reaction of the monkeys to children.
When my staff members bring their young children to watch the monkeys over the weekend, the monkeys go crazy, the adult males go through rituals as if to try to entice these little kids to join their group, whereas they wouldn't give adult humans any bit of their time or energy.
But Ugandan expert Peter Appel is highly skeptical that any primate would nurture a human child in the wild. He thinks the zoo incident is an aberration.
From what I know about animal behavior, that is a very unique case, because their innate instinct would be to attack or kill this infant.
Peter Appel is a veterinarian and Ugandan wildlife specialist. He works with a variety of primates, including vervet monkeys, the species that supposedly cared for John. And Appel has a slightly less romantic explanation as to how John survived with the monkeys.
Vervets are by nature a trash species. They collect much more than they could eat. So probably what happened in this instance is that John survived on the leftover food that the vervets must have been collecting and couldn't finish. John would probably pick what was left over of that.
This shifts the interpretation of the relationship between John and the monkeys. It was perhaps not the vervets that cared for John, but John who used them to survive. And as Peter explains, there's a clear difference between tolerance and caretaking.
To be nurtured means that you will be fully accepted into the structure of the society. John being human, it's very unlikely that he was nurtured. He could have been accepted or even just tolerated. Nurturing is not possible.
But what led the 4-year-old boy to the monkeys in the first place? Was it human survival instincts, a need for food, or was he in search of physical contact?